Hey there guys, this is your host Richard. So yeah, Chapter 259 just dropped and to be honest, we really can't hold back our tears. Of course, we knew that things were gonna get intense in Shinjuku. Our heroes have been struggling to keep up with Ryomen Sukuna for a while now, and it just seems to be getting worse ever since he gained control of Megumi Fushiguro's body. Even Itadori seemed to be losing his footing, pun intended, in the face of Sukuna's endless slashing. But the worst was yet to come. The massive cliffhanger from Chapter 258 has been keeping us up at night, and I guess we finally have some answers in the recently released Chapter 259. Thus, let's break this pivotal chapter down and see what it entails for the future of the series and the rest of our characters. You better expand your domains and your minds because things are about to get hotter than ever before. A tale of two techniques, Blood Convergence and Sukuna's Furnace. In stark contrast to the high-octane sequence that finished 258, Chapter 259 begins with a seemingly gentle scene that reveals the secrets of the Choso's Convergence. But as we already know, despite all his qualities as an elder brother, Choso isn't really the best teacher, something that we've already seen earlier in the series. In this scene, Choso and Noritoshi Kamo are seen teaching Yuji blood manipulation in preparation for the fight against Sukuna. Now, it's interesting to note that despite having access to Soul Switch training, Yuji would have to learn blood manipulation the hard way, as both his chances at switching would be occupied by Okotsu and Kusakabe. We've already seen Yuji use the simple domain he learned from Okotsu, and that was surely a clever choice. Anyway, we get a simple explanation of how blood manipulation functions, as Kamo describes the sensation of using the technique as heat encompassing the body. Well, kinda like when you piss yourself. This elegant observation obviously came from Yuji, but he isn't really wrong. They go on to discuss how Convergence allows the user to compress the flow of blood, similar to the crumpling of paper or the squeezing of a sponge. Kamo also acknowledges that in the case of Yuji, it'd be more important for him to master the defensive basics, like creating sutures and stopping blood flowing from open wounds. Needless to say, the lesson turned out pretty great, but it probably made Choso feel just a bit ignored. He tries to save the day by flaunting his ultimate move, the Supernova. But I guess that's a story for another time because on the very next page, we're greeted by one of the most terrifying spreads to ever be put down by the writer Gege Akutami. I mean, just a customary glimpse of Sukuna in all his glory would be enough to send even the strongest sorcerers cowering under the beds. Well, perhaps not Gojo, but you get the point. As we saw in the last chapter, Sukuna was just on the verge of unleashing a technique powerful enough to flatten the whole of Shinjuku, called the Furnace. Since Jujutsu Kaisen is one of those shows that's mindful of not letting overpowered characters get out of hand, I guess we're all thinking of a certain ancient Uchiha here. The Furnace does have certain limitations. Now, we may have seen this technique in use once before, during the Shibuya arc, when Sukuna and Jogo fought each other. These two special-grade spirits hell-bent on incinerating each other showcased a firepower display that literally left Shibuya looking like a crater. This was also where we saw Sukuna use flames for the first time by commanding a mysterious technique that allowed him to fashion an arrow out of pure fire. Now, we see these flames once more as Ryomen Sukuna prepares to destroy our protagonists. The first condition for the activation of this technique is that Sukuna must have already used his other technique, such as cleave and dismantle. The process is quite akin to cooking, and Sukuna's slashing here is seen as mere preparation of the ingredients compared to the power of the furnace. Despite the sheer firepower in the flames of the furnace, it's revealed that the technique actually has pretty limited speed and range, and those qualities are sorta necessary when fighting a physical specimen like Itadori Yuji. But come on, it's Sukuna we're talking about, and the King of Sorcery would never use a technique that's even slightly flawed. Thus, Sukuna has placed a binding vow on this technique. Outside of his domain, the furnace cannot be used on multiple targets. This allows Sukuna to completely annihilate all living creatures stuck in his malevolent shrine, making the technique almost omniscient when used in conjunction with his domain. Moreover, Sukuna has also altered certain aspects of his domain, allowing living beings to enter the shrine, which enables him to maintain the attack's output without sealing the domain entirely. As the flaming arrow descends upon Shinjuku, we also learn that the flames from the attack literally transform into thermobaric explosives. The heat creates shockwaves of such intensity that everything in the domain's range instantaneously turns to dust. Well, even in this case, Gojo Satoru is an exception. Sukuna recalls the time when he fought Satoru as the Six Eyes user, where the former was forced to constantly change the conditions on the move to keep up with the great sorcerer of the modern era. The furnace cooled down and Satoru escaped, but I guess a lesson was learned that day. The elder brother's burden. From the expression on Yuji's face after he first witnessed the raw power of Sukuna's furnace, it seems like it all but accepted defeat, but Itadori is saved at the very last moment by a battered and wounded Choso, using all his might to hold up a blood barrier to keep Yuji from burning to a crisp. But the technique is clearly taking a toll on him, and combined with the effects of Sukuna's flames, it's evident that Choso is breathing his last. An elder brother till the very end apologizes to Yuji for not being a good teacher, and if you're not tearing up at this point, well, I guess we just can't be friends. friends. Jokes aside, I guess this is what makes Choso such a beloved character. His inherent sense of responsibility and sacrifice whenever his brothers are threatened makes his death inevitable. But damn, we didn't expect it to hit like a black flash, right in the feels. In some really stunning yet subtle panels by Gege, we're able to see Choso's body burning up almost in real time. Choso explains that he lacks as a teacher just because he always liked to do things instinctively. Thus, he never got the hang of all the curse technique know-how like Kamo, but instinct was enough to make him one of the strongest characters in the show. In the panels before Choso's demise, the two brothers are whisked away to a special realm where they manage to have one last conversation. Even at the very end of the road, all Choso can think about is his brothers and the bond he has with them. At long last, the Choso's barrier fades away, withering away in the aftermath of furnace along with the remnants of his body. Left alone in the empty ashes of what was once a city, a confused Yuji wonders whether it's all been in vain. After all, he'd always thought of himself as a cog in the wheel to be used as the situation demanded. However, now, as he finds himself compelled to repay his brother's sacrifice, Yuji finds himself oddly hesitant. Perhaps it's the scorched landscape all around him, but our young protagonist's convictions are truly shaken to the core. For a brief moment, it almost feels like all hope is lost, as we find that the only visible survivor is Sukuna himself. He towers above the ruins of the battlefield only to find someone staring back at him in complete defiance. Now, who else could it be but Yuji's other brother, the Grade 1 sorcerer, Aoi Todo? Man has a habit of getting to the right place at the right time, and we're not complaining. Maybe there's a silver lining in the mushroom cloud of destruction after all. The battle rages are on. We jump to a flashback right after Todo's arrival and find ourselves in the sorcerer's school. Todo and Ms. May seem to be engrossed in a strategic discussion to evacuate those stuck in Sukuna's domain. They realize that by using May's crows and Todo's teleportation, they might just stand a chance in front of the mighty king. But that's not all. They seem to decide to keep their plan a secret from Yuji on account of the resonance between Yuji and Sukuna, as the two have shared a single body for quite a while. Now, this could also be hinting at the return of a certain resonance user whom we haven't seen since the Shibuya incident. Even the thought was kind of enough to get us out of our sadness and back aboard the hype train. However, back on the battlefield, time is running too short to reveal all the plans to Yuji. Thus, in a truly characteristic fashion, Todo just assures the traumatized Itadori that everyone else is mostly fine. Though not completely reassuring, the statement does help Yuji to snap back to reality. In the last pages of the manga, we see Todo and Yuji join forces and charge right at the King of Spells. As the three prepare to face off, all we can say for certain is that the Battle of Shinjuku is far from over. Maybe the strength of their brotherly bond will prove stronger than Sukuna. But come on, there are definitely a few more tricks up his sleeve. This is where Chapter 259 draws to an end. Jujutsu Kaisen has kinda been killing it with these cliffhangers. But goddamn Gege, you're also killing your audience with this never-ending anxiety, but in a good way. Marvelous verdicts. Well, to say that Chapter 259 was a banger, it's kind of an understatement. The chapter not only shed light on some very confusing and complex techniques, but also saw the end of a fan-favorite character, all in about 15 pages. Now, that's some efficient writing. We also can't wait for Chapter 260, because it does seem like the end is nigh. There are multiple plans in motion, none of which either Yuji or the audience are aware of, which definitely means that there are quite a few twists and turns ahead. But for now, all we can do is wait and put our trust in the most brotherly bond of all time. And for Choso, well, all we'd like to say is, it was nice knowing you, brother. Well, we've reached the end for this one, but let us know all about your crazy theories regarding the future in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on our weekly JJK breakdowns. Well, goodbye then, and we'll catch you in the next one.